looks like it's got the... Yep.
Yes. I'm ready.
This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 654, recorded on Wednesday, January 18th, 2018. Live at SF Sketchfest 2018. Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Kiki, and tonight on This Week in Science we are going to fill your heads with space lasers, glowing bones, and a shocking demonstration.
A world that exists beyond the calcium-reinforced collagen skull casing that surrounds your brain. In reality, no one really lives every second of every day. What you put into your world is all your world will ever be. And most of what we humans tend to put in our heads was designed to entertain our brain. And everything else that goes along with that is meant to influence the brain. To buy this, be like that, vote this way, drive that idmobile, eat this kind of food while laughing with a pretty friend who only prefers that brand of beverage. Brains are being trained that every problem is easily solved, and every product is a solution. So complicated, though, is reality, and in so many ways that some people actually become curious about it. Those curious people ask questions. They read books. They write books. They watch documentaries. They Google stuff. They invented Google because they were needing to Google more things. They visit museums like this. And some spend a great deal of time in schools studying complicated things with other curious people. They take jobs that take on complicated challenges. But by far the most important thing that curious people do is understand. Understand that the world will only ever be as good as the one between their ears. So we've brought you a whole bunch of curious stuff to stick in your ear here on This Week in Science, coming up next.
And this is the dance break, everyone. You ready?
You are all encouraged to stand up and dance for this portion of the program.
That's right. This is where we get our wiggles out, dance it out. I wanna know. Welcome to This Week in Science. We're so glad you're here. Welcome to This Week in Science, everybody. We are back once again to bring you the science that fit within this last week, or at least the stuff that we found very interesting. I'm Dr. Kiki, and we're at the Cal Academy of Sciences for SF Sketchfest with you. Thank you for joining us tonight.
But we are not comedians. I think it might have been a misbooking. I'm not sure what we're doing here. We will do our best to entertain.
Yeah, I don't know. We might be funny, but we're not making any promises. But we do have a great show ahead. We are hanging out with you guys, so it's going to be a fantastic night. And we might just get to do some science tonight, maybe. We'll see. I have plans, and I'm very excited. Okay, are you guys ready for the sciencey goodness? Yeah. I had news about syrup. I also have news about space lasers and viruses. Well, not really a virus, but something that acts like a virus in your brain. That's what I brought. Justin, what do you have?
I have an amazing story about predicting creative brains and a normal everyday item that could secretly be bad for you. That's a teaser for a next show. You have to stay tuned next week to find out what that everyday thing that might be there.
All right. And Blair, what is in the animal corner?
Oh, I'm so excited. Ooh.
Unmute.
I brought, oh.
Gotta hit the little button.
We did a sound check and everything.
I brought chameleons, I brought stomatopods, and I brought poop.
because what show would be complete without poop? We've got to have the poop. Okay, before we jump into the show, I want to remind everyone that you can subscribe to This Week in Science on iTunes, in the Google Play podcast portal, on Stitcher, Spreaker, TuneIn, all places that good podcasts are found. You can also find us on YouTube and Facebook. Just look for This Week in Science, or TWIS, on the Google machine. And now it is time for the news. Okay, I teased the syrup. We're going to start with the bad news. I'm going to start with the bad news, and then we'll get to the good news and the fun, hopefully. Climate change is going to bring the end of syrup. You will no longer have syrup on your pancakes because of climate change. Now, scientists were hoping that all of the nitrogen that's pumped into the air and through the nitrogen cycle then into the soil by our cars and our factories and our agriculture might actually fix the climate issue for these sugar maples that produce our syrup, but that isn't the way that it worked out. So they did a couple of analyses, and they were like, hey, what if climate only warms by about 1 degree Celsius and changes the way weather works? And it was like, well, the sugar maples might do okay. And then they said, hey, what about the business as usual scenario, which is how much we're emitting into the air. Patterns are going to change, and there's going to be a dramatic drop in moisture and water availability in the area where sugar maples currently exist and are used to make. Not going to help one bit. Sugar maples within the next century, gone. No more syrup for your pancakes.
But the silver lining though.
Oh my goodness. Another interesting. 2015, there was a grid that live on and in all of the Saiga. Changing climate to hot and humid made them deadly. All of the Saiga died. And so this isn't great news, because it's predicted that if climate continues changing as it has been, then we're going to see more of these hot and humid conditions. And so the Saiga, which scientists and government officials are trying to save, may just completely die off.
And it's weird because who here knew about Saiga before this happened in 2015? Okay, so a handful.
Wow, this is
but I have a feeling these are Blair's zoo friends.
They definitely are.
She stacked the audience.
Yeah, but for those of you who don't work at the zoo, I didn't see a lot of hands. So this was a kind of a weird happening in that nobody knew about the Saiga before they almost all died. And now everyone's going, there's this really cool animal. Oh no.
They're dying. They're an antelope that looks like a camel.
And they have a fun little...
Yeah, they got a weird little nose. Yeah. So anyway, does all this negative climate talk stress you out? Is this making you feel depressed? How many people in the audience are starting to feel stressed by this conversation and like they might get depressed as a result of it? According to new research, you are one of 3 personality types in how you respond to information about climate. If you feel stressed and potentially depressed by climate news, you're a biospheric personality type. Biospheric personality types are worried about the entire biosphere, about nature, about all the animals in it. You think holistically about the globe and everything on it. And so this stuff makes you a little stressed out, and you are actually people more likely to act on this stress to help yourself become less stressed. You're more environmentally active. For those of you in the audience who did not raise your hands, you're either egotistical or altruistic. Egotistical personality types are more interested in like, well, okay, climate change, how's it affecting me? How is it going to affect me? And the altruistic and egotistical personality types are a little less stressed by climate change. You are, yeah.
Oh, Portland. But the point is, it actually has just as much chance of landing somewhere you're not as it has landing where you are.
Yeah, the chance you'll be smashed by the space station is very small. We don't have any lasers to get rid of the space station at this point in time. But Chinese researchers just published an analysis of the feasibility of putting lasers on some large craft in space in order to get rid of space junk and the junk you're trying to annihilate. So,
or worse.
The movies from the 70s. Chairface Chippendale, that's right. Anyway, so space lasers, they might be coming soon to a planet near you. That's all I've got to start with. Justin, what do you have?
Wow.
Is it your turn?
I also have a story.
Use your microphone, voice.
This is my microphone.
Yes, we have
this
many
is the
stories
thing
here.
that was kind of interesting. So they took 163 subjects, human subjects, and they hooked them up to fMRI machines so they could watch their brain activity as they did a task of coming up with a creative use for ordinary objects. One of the examples was a brick. Come up with as many creative ideas as you possibly can for how this brick, while they were, or after the fact. And what they found was there are certain parts of the brain that the most creative people are operating in synchronicity. There's parts of our creative folks that they found from this study. They were turning on multiple networks at once. What I thought was kind of interesting about this, they had 3 networks that they said, these are subroutine networks. The salience network, which is important for detecting what is the important information in a sea of other information. They had the executive control network, which was useful for people to normally focus on ideas, and the default mode network, which is involved in memory and simulation. So these were 3 modes of creativity, or modes of brain activity that they saw being expressed at once. What I found really interesting about this, though, wasn't just that they found that creative people are creative and you can see it in their brain, but they could go back and look at brain scans from people who took the same creativity test and predict which ones came up with the most creative answers based on the scans themselves.
So you can look at people's brains and say this person's creative and is going to come up with creative ideas.
Well, the way that they did it was they separated them. So the person who's looking at this brain, 100 ideas for a brick or 2, right? But based on the brain activity, they could point to the ones that were the ones that came up with the most creative answers. Okay, so you might have scored really highly. And they did have some sort of protocol in place for how they did. They had to train the people who were doing the rating in the first place to look for certain things. Was one part of what makes creative people, they think, in this creative is that they're not just brainstorming and coming up with a lot of ideas for a thing, because in that you're usually using memory for other ideas that you've seen bricks associated with. Well, we could throw it through a window. We could make a small wall. We could put it on its side and stack it like a block. But they were looking for more unique things. So that was just really
So much of that circuitry and the networks is a result of, so that, it's all just like, no, I can't do that. And then jazz music, they're fingering of the music.
Okay, so we have at Cal Academy of Sciences a room full of people who have never been affected by anything in science.
Nope,
Yes, I'm providing
nothing. Okay. Today I got a flu shot. That's important to everyone. Anyone else? What has science, aren't you? Healthy person. Has science done anything for you lately?
Let's see. I was able to not drive in the rain because I could carpool.
That's very important, and you probably were able to carpool thanks to apps on your phone. Possibly. I'm going to play jump rope.
Pedialyte is the best post-food poisoning drink.
I will agree with you there, yes.
Also best post-hangover.
Thank you, Pedialyte, for those wonderful, nourishing electrolytes. Anybody else have any ideas? What has science done for you lately?
In the back, Kiki, in the back. There's a hand way back.
In the way back.
What science done for me lately is I can get a mold taken on my teeth the way you would for a retainer, but instead of a retainer, I get a grill instead.
That is modern science. It's forward thinking. I got in an airplane today. Science threw me through the air.
You landed in a slight drizzle, too. Quite astounding.
Landed in a slight drizzle. There was only a slight delay on the flight. Everything was nice. Thank you, science, for airplanes, for grills, for Pedialyte, for carpooling, for flu shots, for health, for Cal Academy of Sciences. Yes.
It's a really cool finding.
Lots more.
Displays.
And they have eyeballs that go in different directions.
Yeah, I really like them for their really funny shaped front paws, hands, feet, whatever
Right,
you call
where
them. They're grasping hands.
They grasp all they can.
A new study came out this week with new information about chameleons' amazing camouflage and color displays. They are now the first known terrestrial squamate, basically a scaled reptile, to use fluorescence. This is not biofluorescence, they're not creating their own light, but they are using fluorescence. They figured this out by putting a bunch of pictures, taking a bunch of pictures of chameleons and putting some chameleons under UV light. And they found that these guys were emitting a glow. And that glow had a very particular shape and structure. It was that of their bones.
So, so their skeleton was showing through their skin.
Correct.
Glowing. They're glowing from the inside out.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So wait, can other chameleons see that?
Yes, so that's the indication there. And so this is not just the pattern of the skeleton over the skin. This is actually the bone showing through. The way that's happening is with little raised bumps called tubercles all over their skin. They're kind of like little teeny tiny windows straight to the bone. And so as they walk around with those amazing front hands throughout the forest,
looking at everything with their eyes in different directions.
Actually, the sun is shining down through those tubercles. The bones are absorbing the light, and then they are emitting this fluorescence.
I mean, this to me, I mean, if you were to take, I mean, under UV light, you know, you smile under a black light, your teeth shine. If you were just a skeleton, your bones would glow under UV light. But we're covered by all sorts of tissue. I just find it amazing that their skin is thin enough that they've created this communication channel that's used for what? We don't know, but
and this was very widespread. They looked at 160 specimens from 31 species in Madagascar and 165 specimens from 20 species in Africa, and they all showed this. Some of them did the entire body, even with the ribs and the tailbones. Some of them did just kind of the head region, but the light was always kind of blue, and it's because the outer layer of skin, this very thin outer layer of skin, changed as a filter. It changed the light in the frequency towards the blue end of the spectrum.
And so I think it's really interesting they're in this, you know, if you think of the jungle environment and out as a signal compared to that background.
Absolutely, and Kiki and I were talking about this earlier, and we were discussing what possibly this would be used for. Chameleons are already really good at color